Hey, Chrissy here. I am a landscape architect and the owner of Kismet Design. I am a very process-driven designer, and I love sharing what I do and how I do it with anyone who's interested. Reaching your true potential and achieving your own personal goals will not happen by chance. You have to set your intentions, make a plan, and do the work. Thank you for joining me to nerd out on design. Don't forget to subscribe and to share too. Let's create something great together. Today, I have returning to the podcast, Lisa Nunamaker. Her company, Paper Garden Workshop, is the go-to place to learn garden design and graphics. I had the amazing opportunity to recently attend a workshop of hers here in Washington, and it was so much fun. Although March is not quite here yet, by the time this airs, March will have arrived. And my focus topic for the month of March is vision. And I'm really excited to talk to Lisa about her vision for Paper Garden Workshop. Welcome back to the podcast, Lisa.
Hi, Chrissy. It's so wonderful to be here. And just like you'd mentioned, it was really fun to meet you in Washington. That's the best part about presenting and giving talks is getting to meet so many people. So now we're friends.
In real life, not just over Zoom.
Exactly. Real friends.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. You, like I've mentioned this to you before, but you fill in so many wonderful gaps in this industry and help so many people. And we all appreciate that.
Well, thank you. So do you. It's
Thanks.
fantastic. So to jump right in, having recently gone full-time with Paper Garden Workshop, I would love to discuss your vision and the process of coming up with that vision. And I guess to start, how long have you had Paper Garden Workshop as a side business to your full-time teaching job? And how long has it been since you've gone full-time with it now?
Paper Garden Workshop started, I was trying to remember the exact year. It was probably 2011. So it was right before I started working and teaching full-time at Iowa State. And I worked in the horticulture department at Iowa State since 2000, I think beginning of 2011, actually. So it's probably 2010 that I started Paper Garden Workshop. And I had multiple blogs before then. I had a food blog that I was drawing every day just to force me to draw. And then I had another garden kind of ish blog. And then right before I started teaching, I'm like, you know what, I need to start focusing on garden design. That's what I know. So I think in the back of my mind, I thought maybe this will make me look good when I apply for this job, that I'm actually writing about it, involved in that end of things. So I started approximately 2010-ish. It's been a while. And then I retired in quotes from Iowa State last May, so May of 23. So I was doing this as a side for over 10 years while I was at Iowa State. Now, I will tell you, when I say it's on the side, I wouldn't consider it. I mean, yes, I was doing some things like doing presentations and that kind of thing, but I don't know if I would consider it necessarily a full-fledged business. I saw it more as a place where I can store my videos for my students and content for my students, and then also in the same time share that with the general public. So I would share the things that I was doing with my students, and then anybody can check in around the world to see it. So my audience actually grew organically over that time. I was even hit and miss with newsletters. I was probably writing a newsletter anywhere from every month to every 6 months, sometimes once a year. I was very hit and miss about it, but I was really just wanting to make sure I shared that content with other people, and people seem to appreciate that. So I just kept sharing it.
Well, it's great content. And I think especially for those that don't have a formalized degree or education in garden design, it's a huge asset to be able to have someone to tell you like how to do things, and even just talking about things like line weights and structure. And there's so much to it that, you know, some people have a really good eye for the design, but the graphics part and like communicating that to someone, there's things that aren't necessarily intuitive. So I think it's super valuable.
Yeah, it's been fun. You know, teaching in the classroom has really shown me where students can struggle with certain things, like what comes easy, what doesn't come easy. So it was always fun for me on my blog to, post, videos or posts on, really specific things. I mean, I even wrote blog posts on how to stipple a lawn area. I mean, very specific like that, because one day I would walk into class and my students were like, I don't know, what do you mean by this? And I'm like, I'll just write a blog post on that. So it was just nice being in a classroom because I could see those really finer details that I would have never caught if I wasn't lucky enough to be there in person.
Well, and sometimes like I've talked about this with some of the other newer designers that I work with on coaching. Sometimes you get so into it and things seem so
Mhm.
inherent to you because you've been doing it for so long that you kind of
Yes.
forget like what it was like to like not know some of those things. How to stipple, even just line weights, or what's the difference between an arbor and a pergola. Some of those things you don't really think about because it seems so inherent. I joke, one of the women that I've been talking with, she's a really new designer. She took some site measurements all in pen, and she did three different colors of pen so that she could kind of distinguish like what she was
Ah.
doing. And I was like, that's a brilliant idea, but it started raining. So she had to leave because her whole site measurements was like bleeding. And I
Oh
was like,
no.
if you use pencil, and she's like, I never even considered it. Like some of those things that you don't even think about. It's just like muscle memory. I never use pen on a site measurement because well, I'm in Washington, it's always raining. But some of those things that you don't even think about. But I think being around students and newer designers, like they just expose you to those things that you don't think about how you do or why you do things.
It's so true. And it's so funny. We were talking about this last night at home, actually, because my husband's a teacher also. And that, every year you get a new set of students and you're teaching them all the same things again. And usually I get the same questions, like I can usually anticipate, but every once in a while something else new comes up. And like you said, I'm always, it humbles me because I realize, yes, I'm very close to this topic. And so those 10 years, actually more than 10 years teaching, has really shown me like, okay, I need to step back about 3 steps. And I hope it's helped. I think it's helped me with my teaching. And even today, when I teach something, if I see a glazed look over people's faces, I'm like, okay, we need to stop and we need to think of a different way to teach this. I just did a workshop on the East Coast and had the best students, and I was trying something new with them in person that I had never done before. And half of the group got it, and the other group was looking at me like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And it was honestly, it was really nice. Like, it really makes me realize, like, I love teaching online, but I love being able to have that checkpoint of being in person sometimes, because it really showed me like, okay, I need to refigure this out. So we just changed it. Like in the workshop, I just quickly changed. Like, okay, now we need to talk about this differently, because obviously I did not approach this well, and they were very kind. And that's what I love about teaching in person. I mean, we can adjust online too, but there's something different when you can see people's facial expressions and they may not necessarily say something online, right?
Yeah. You don't
So
see
I
that
just feel
same discomfort in the confusion when it's over a video.
exactly. So yeah, I love when students are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. One of my most profound things was early in my career. I had a student where I was showing them how to add color pencil on plant material or on plant symbols. And one of them said to me, this is no, this does not make sense to me how you're doing this. I don't understand. And so we talked a little bit, and I realized it's because she was left-handed, and for her she felt more comfortable. And that was the day I realized, okay, I really need to step back, because everybody has their own way of approaching how to render or how to do something in terms of drawing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so like those little stories that I get in person versus, so the classroom experience has been invaluable. I'm very fortunate for that.
So what was the thing that pushed you to transition or to retire, quote unquote, from teaching at Iowa State and go full-time into Paper Garden Workshop?
Oh, that is such a great question. So first I have to say that I love teaching at Iowa State. That's like my dream job. and best department in the world. We have the best, like our department chair is awesome. But like with any job, every job that I was at, I probably at about year 7 to 10, I was like, okay, I need new challenges, right? And as I was teaching, I was building my website's content over those years. And of course, when the pandemic hit, now I'm like, no, it's almost like being on maternity leave. Every major thing that I've ever done is because I was on maternity leave, which is so funny. I'm like, okay, I need to do something different now. I'm home all day. And even though I was teaching still for Iowa State, you have this extra time because you're not driving an hour both ways anymore. And you have all this, you have a little bit more time. And I realized, like, so when I taught this course online with, I learned how to do an online class. Then I did my online graphics class for the first time during the pandemic. And the feedback I got from professionals around the country, around the world, were like, I really need this. I really need to learn these skills. And I can't afford to go back to college. I can't. So I was only teaching graphics. I wasn't teaching design because I had made the decision over the last 10 years. A lot of people were asking me, I need to know how to draw. And I don't know where to get those skills because I know some colleges they're not able to include it in their program. It's included, it's not, I was lucky. I actually had a separate, drawing class in school, but I know that doesn't happen anymore. Even in the program that I went through, they just kind of incorporate it within the design classes. And I realized that maybe I could help more people. And I do mostly have female students. I have lots of male students too, and they're awesome also. But I do have this like innate sense of wanting to empower women in particular and give them these skills so they can feel confident with not only their drawing skills, but I have learned at Iowa State, when I can empower people with drawing skills, they get that confidence. And then they feel like they can tackle that next step of design or whatever it might be. Even though we all know you don't have to be a great artist to be a great designer. And I know that I say that to my students all the time. But there is something about when you feel comfortable drawing your vision, then you feel comfortable, like, I can do this, like I can actually do this. So, long answer, but I don't know if I necessarily had a vision at the time, but when I taught that first class, I realized I can help so many people with this course and help a lot of people get up their footing and actually follow their dreams of going into landscape design or garden design. So when that first class was successful back in 2021, and I think it was January or February when I taught that first class, I'm like, maybe I can help more people. And the original idea was not to say, hey, I'm going to leave my job. I'm like, how long can I do both of these? And then I realized more and more people needed that. And I'm like, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can, kind of phase out of teaching at Iowa State and then kind of phase in. So it was about a 2-year process for me to kind of do that phase. And I was very honest with my department chair. I said, this is what I'm thinking. How much time do you need so I can phase out slowly? And so they had some time to think through that. And my goal is, I love my students at Iowa State, but when I realized I can help more people online, I wanted to be able to do that. And again, the whole idea for me is, how can I empower people and help them with skills to give them that confidence so they can support themselves, so they can, follow their dreams. So that's really kind of what pushed me to kind of
And
go that direction.
those Iowa State students can still take your class.
They can.
So but you're not limited to just those students. So I think that's
Exactly.
fantastic.
I actually have one student in my design membership, which is fun. She's taken graphics from me at Iowa State. And then she now is in our design membership, which is really cool. And yeah, I feel fortunate for that. So yeah, the design community that we have now, which is after the graphics class, is kind of that next step.
And is that like a yearly community, or like how does that ebb and flow?
Yeah, so the design membership. So I teach my graphics class once a year, and that's in January. It's 8 weeks. And I just focus on that one class once a year because it's so intensive. But then we have a membership that runs every month. So it only opens twice a year. And then how it works, and people always ask me this, like, why aren't you just teaching a design class? Like, why are you doing a membership? And I've taught design classes, obviously at Iowa State, but there are so many great classes online, and I've taught design classes to lots of, garden clubs. Like I'll do 8-week, learn design in 8 weeks, but you and I both have our 5-year degrees, and we know that there's a lot that we're missing when we only teach in a short time. And so I decided to do a membership instead, a monthly membership, because I've learned when you take a design class, you end up having more questions and answers afterwards. And you need that support afterwards. So, let's just say I take a certificate class and I learn all these awesome things. And now I'm going to start designing for people, even if it's on my own garden, but sometimes it's for designing for other people, for clients. And now all of a sudden I have these little detailed questions. I know you and I were talking about this, like with like hardscapes or contracts or whatever it might be. Now you want these other questions answered. Now that you're actually in the thick of it and you're practicing, you have different sets of questions. So the design membership helps with that kind of stuff. Now I do focus on design in my design membership, but we invite guests in, like you came in last week, and then we talk about specific things like contracts and all that too. But I only focus on one design topic a month. Like we might just talk about design plant communities, or this month we're talking about shapes on the ground plane using lines of force. Like it's very specific. I want to teach them and have them explore one topic at a time, because I want to have them like take a deep breath and just focus on that versus like shoving it all down their throats in 3 weeks. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. I figure a lot of these people are taking classes other places. So my membership is about slowing down. We're building a community. We're there for each other. We inspire each other. I mean, how awesome that we can share work with each other. So when I have activities, we're seeing everybody's activities. Like I've learned teaching in a classroom, it's way more beneficial when you do your design and then you get to see everybody else's too, right? Like how beneficial is that? So this community, the membership is about building the community, again, empowering, providing inspiration, because we all inspire each other. And it's that next step of, I just need some support. I want to have some place to ask questions. And that's what the membership is for, the design membership. The graphics class is intense. I teach you a lot of skills in 8 weeks. And then the membership is there to kind of that next step of, we can try to applying those graphic skills towards design now. And we're going to do one step at a time.
I like that. And I like the focus topics. Obviously I'm doing the same thing, just on a very different platform, but it's nice to have like one thing to focus on and really dive in on, because otherwise you just kind of skim coat everything. And I think that like classes and learning and teaching is kind of more just being exposed to the tools, and then you have to go out and actually figure out how to use them.
Right.
And so having that membership, I think is really nice, as people are actually doing the things, then they realize what questions to ask. Because then until you start using it, like you don't even know what to ask yet.
And it's interesting because teaching at a college or a university, I thought I knew every single question. Like when I would do presentations, like I would get asked by garden clubs and different groups to do presentations, and questions never bothered me because I always get the same questions over and over again, until I started teaching to non-traditional students, people that were either already working in their yards or they were emerging professionals. All of a sudden I was getting questions like, they were so specific because they were in the thick of it now. It's different when you're just learning something and you haven't actually tried it versus someone that actually lives the profession, and like, wow, these questions are like tough. Even in my graphics class, the first time I was getting questions, I can't remember them right now, the specific ones, but I was getting questions I never got asked before because they were practicing right now and they needed to know that information. And I started to see that, like, what a change. Like that audience was so different and I was not expecting that.
That's really interesting. I mean, it makes perfect sense in hindsight, but you would kind of expect it to be the same, like learning the same material, with like-minded people, but where you're at in the use of those tools does make a big difference.
It really does. Yeah. I mean, questions like, I need to know how to draw a light and put it in the landscape. I was never asked that question before, or how to, because my students would only ask that question if that was part of the program that I gave them as the pretend client.
Right.
And so things, I mean, all kinds of things. It was just, but it's fun. I mean, I learned so much, and it benefited my Iowa State students because I was getting asked questions from professionals or emerging professionals or even homeowners that have been gardening for a long time. They were asking me questions, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can turn this around now and teach my students this in college. Like, it was a beneficial thing back and forth. It was really cool, actually. I felt like I grew as an instructor and as a professional just from like 2021 to now, because I had those two totally different audiences feeding on it, like in my brain. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool to see that.
When you started your course that you
Mhm.
teach, did you have the community in mind at that time? Or was it something that as you've kind of worked on your vision and focusing like the services and what you offer, did that kind of come later as a, oh wait, this is something that people really need?
I love that question. I had no clue. That was not my intent. Because, I was still working at Iowa State. I thought, I'm just going to try this online. I'm going to do my thing. When the 8 weeks for that first class were up, it was actually 7 weeks for the first class. A lot of them said to me, we don't want to separate. We want to stay together. And I'm like, oh, what do we want? What are we thinking here? And they're like, can we just meet monthly? Can we figure something out? So I had to I'm like, I have never done this before. So I had to figure out quickly, okay, is this something I can handle? So I actually created a graphics membership, not a design membership. And actually my graphics membership has gone up until next month will be the last month of my graphics membership, because we've realized that the design membership is so strong now. I'm just kind of folding everybody into that one. But at the time, they wanted to stay together. So I quickly pulled together a graphics membership, and I had a good number of them join that membership. And all I did in that membership is I slowed things down dramatically. I had one activity a month, and we would practice 2-point perspective one month. And then we would do, elevation drawings and practice that. We had learned them already, but they just wanted to keep practicing, and they wanted to stay together. So that's what
Keep that feedback loop.
Yes. And it was the weirdest. I did not anticipate the closeness and the familiarity that everybody would have with each other after that course ended. So we're in Garden Graphics Toolkit right now, the drawing class. And it's happening now with that group too. Because I always encourage people to share their work, so I want them to be inspired by each other, right? So then they start to see each other's names and they're cheering each other on, and it's a very positive thing. So then they all know each other. Like, you get to know their style and how they approach things. And it's just the coolest thing ever. So I did not anticipate the community part at all. And it is the best part. And I've always loved team learning. Like, I use team-based learning at Iowa State, which is an actual pedagogy thing. And then when I worked at Ryman Gardens, which is the botanic garden at Iowa State, we always did team planning. Like, I developed a process called dimensional design, which is actually my peanut butter and jelly garden book, but I used it at more of an administrative level because I feel strongly that we should all work together, that all of our viewpoints are needed, from the custodian all the way up to the director. Like, everybody needs to be involved in the planning process at a botanic garden, right? So I did that there also. So I should have known that community would form in a classroom too. So yeah, the community is a big part of it. And I did not anticipate that. That was kind of a surprise.
A bigger like sense of community and desire for community with your paper garden workshop students than you did your Iowa State students?
Oh, that's a good question. My students at Iowa State also have a great community. So it's a smaller group, of course, because there's not as many students. But I would say we have a lot of fun and we have a great community there also. I mean, like, we have landscape club, and that group is just so much fun. And we would travel, we'd go to NCLC, National Collegiate Landscape Competition, and we do so I would say we also had a strong community, and our department has a strong community because of our department chair. I mean, he's awesome about making sure we all work together. So I would say we do have, I don't want to say it in the past. It is a strong community within the horticulture department. I think it's an amazing department. And I felt like I had that there also. So it's nice that it's just bigger online because there's more
Yeah.
people. But so I would say it was in both places. And I
Okay.
think and I think as part of that, I feel students need to feel safe in the classroom, whether it's online or not. And I feel like if you had that community, like I only experienced it in person, I didn't think you could do it online. So when I was seeing it happening online, I'm like, this is what these students need. We stressed that in the beginning of our drawing class, that this is a safe place. We can give feedback to each other and help each other, but there's no negativity here. We're lifting each other up because we're all making mistakes. We're all not as good as we think we are at the beginning, but we're awesome at the end. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
even in the beginning, everyone's awesome. They just think they're not. And and there's just something when you know that you have a safe environment to show your work and show that progression. It's amazing.
And to ask the silly questions.
Yeah, exactly. And I tell them all the time. I mean, so I always laugh because, I used to watch, This Old House when I was little, and the old days when you had to wait weeks for the whole transformation to happen, instead of now it's when one episode of a show. But I remember as a kid watching Bob Vila, and he would always ask the silliest questions. And I'd be like, I remember the day I realized, oh, he knows the answer. He's just asking that question because he knows there might be people watching that have that question.
Yeah.
And so I always tell them, I'm like, so sometimes I'll ask questions, even though I may know the answer. Sometimes I don't actually. I'm very honest if I don't know something. But I always tell my students, I don't care what you ask anything, because I may learn something new. I may not know the answer, but let's try it. And I think you're right. I think it's about having that safe space for silly questions. Well, you think that are silly questions.
Right.
They're usually not. And just being able to put yourself out there. I think all of that is important.
Well, and chances are someone else in the room has the same question. They just aren't confident enough to pipe up and ask.
It's funny that you say that, because when I was in grad school, I was never the student that would ask questions in school. I was too scared. And I would always figure it out on my own later. I'm like, I'll just figure it out later. Like, that was me. And grad school was the first time that I got brave enough. We were in a class about a particular topic, and it was an awesome class. But about 2 weeks in, I still did not get the concept that we were talking about. And I'm like, shoot. And I can't figure it out because it was such like a theoretical thing. And I finally raised my hand one day and I'm like, I'm doing this for the class. Like, this is what I'm thinking in my brain. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I know we're 2 weeks in, but I have no clue what you're talking about. Like, I finally just got, that was the first time I ever got brave enough. And I kept thinking, okay, there's probably a hush across the room, like, because we're all confused. Like, I was hoping I was helping the whole classroom. Maybe not. Maybe I was the only one confused. But I was glad that I asked the question that day, and it showed me that sometimes we just have to ask the question.
Yeah. I really enjoy asking different people the same question, because especially when I worked in a larger office, I had, let's see, 4 landscape architects and a horticulturist that I worked with. And it was great because I would be working on a design and I would take it to 2 or 3 of them to get feedback if I was like stuck somewhere, and I'd be like, why would you do it that way? And it was just, I mean, it was very entertaining, but it was super informative to like see like how people thought of things differently and their perspective. Cause like one of them, obviously the horticulturist, was really focused on plant material, but she had a really great eye for the balance of hardscapes and plant material. And then the other was really, very invested in the construction, and he
Wow.
kind of played semi superintendent occasionally. And so he was really focused on the actual details of how it gets built. And so you get those different perspectives. And it was really, I mean, I probably annoyed all of them with my questions, but I love asking questions. Like, I'm not shy about it. I mean, hence
That's
why
so
I do
great.
things like this.
You ask really good questions too. Whenever you send me questions, I'm like, oh, this is so nice. It really makes me think through things that I wasn't anticipating before.
Well, good. I'm glad. And I like to send questions ahead of time, just in case it's something that you're like, oh, I don't want to answer this. Or maybe it's like, oh, I need to really think about this. So
I love that.
so Obviously your ideal client, or in this case, students, are people that really need help with design graphics. But how have you gone to develop that vision for who that, fictitious ideal student is? And how do you work on like targeting to like have them even know that your course and your classes and your community are available?
That has been a progress in progress thing, because I allowed my email list to organically grow while I was teaching at Iowa State. And the things that I was sharing were things that I was teaching my students. So how to draw mostly. I mean, yes, I had some design topics too. I thought my original audience was homeowners. So for the longest time, if I would send a newsletter out or do anything like that, I was assuming that that was my audience. And then as I progressed, every once in a while, I would send a little survey out in my newsletter just to find out who they were. And over time, I realized my audience were other students across the country. Maybe their professors were sharing my videos with them. So I was surprised by that. And then, or emerging professionals, they were looking to know how to draw line weights appropriately or whatever it might be. And they just happened to find my videos or materials on Pinterest. Actually was my biggest thing for a long time. People were finding my stuff on Pinterest, and they would just be like, oh, now I know how to draw a tree in elevation or whatever. They would just go to my website for that. And so over the years, I just kept doing surveys and questionnaires. So when I taught Garden Graphics Toolkit, my drawing class in 2021, I still wasn't quite sure what the percentage was of homeowners versus maybe emerging professionals or professionals, people that have already been practicing. So now we're making it more of an effort to ask those questions when we open our class, or when we'll just ask people, like we'll have them introduce themselves, and that's how we find out also. I'm realizing my audience is actually probably more emerging professionals or homeowners that say they don't want to design for others, but secretly they do. Like I have a lot of people where they're a homeowner, and which is perfect. This is a hobby for them, which is awesome. So I do have people like that also. But then they take my drawing class and they're like, oh my gosh, I want to keep doing this. And then they join the design membership because now they actually do want to transition to being someone that has clients and can get paid for it. So I don't know what the exact percentage is, but now I'm almost guessing it's probably more like a 30% homeowners, probably small percentage of professional designers that have been doing it for more than 5 years, probably like 10 or 20%. And then the bulk of my students now are probably less than 5 years in the profession, or they're dreaming about pivoting into it. So it's like that. So it's been an interesting process for me to find that out. And it was just a lot of through questionnaires and surveys in the beginning. And then now we can actually ask my students, which helps a lot. So when I'm finding them, that's the next part of that's hard for me. Like, where do I find people? So I've just been sharing on, of course, Instagram and all of that, but I'm realizing teaching in a horticulture department, I've been realizing there's a lot of people that have horticulture degrees, and they realize, oh, now I want to learn design. So they already have the awesome horticulture knowledge. And I would have never even considered that if I didn't teach in a horticulture department. So now I'm realizing, like, okay, there's a lot of horticulturalists that just want to learn that design aspect of, and how do I find them? I don't know. I haven't perfected that. But I want to help as many people as possible. So if they happen to find me, I just got someone email me the other day that said, oh, I just found you and I need your drawing class. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. And we're like over halfway into it now, and I wish I can help everybody like right now that comes to me. And so hopefully they can use my free resources. We're trying really hard to help people year round. But so yeah, that's kind of how I found who my audience is. And even though we're still tweaking it, it's definitely a big breath, but I always tell people my expertise is teaching the beginner graphics and design. Like, I love that. I can do some advanced stuff and I'm happy to do that, but there's so many other amazing people that can teach advanced topics. I love getting people started. Like, I feel very comfortable building that foundation, helping them build that foundation so they can build on it. And that happens to be a lot of emerging professionals now. It's a good mix.
Well, and I know I probably can't even count a number of, especially women that were stay-at-home moms that
Mhm.
started gardening, and then their neighbor was like, "Oh my gosh, your garden's beautiful." And then they're like, "Oh, well, I can help you pick out plants." And then they just like slowly evolve and realize like, "Oh, I'm actually good at this." Like you hear the same
Mhm.
story for interior designers quite often as well.
Yep.
And I think that especially for those emerging professionals, um, there's not a lot of resources for them.
Right.
And they don't really have the means or the time, especially if they still have small children, to be able
Right.
to go back to school and get that, even a 2-year degree. Like sometimes
Mhm.
that's a little bit too much and a little bit um too demanding, whether it's time or money. And so having, a single course like this is a really valuable resource to give them, that next step, that next edge to figure out like how to make something of it other than just picking out plants for their best friend and their mom and their neighbor kind of thing, right?
Exactly. I almost feel like, if I can give them that foundation, and then they can start to realize, okay, what gaps do I need to fill now? I might be really great with horticulture, but now maybe I need to understand spatial design. Like, how do I actually lay out a hardscape element or a room? Like that would be like, so that like they can start to realize like, okay, I'm good at this, but now I need to fill in, like, and maybe I could just take some online classes or some, like you said, community college classes. Maybe I don't need a 2-year degree. Maybe I just need to take these, because it would be nice if we all had the luxury of going back to school, but we don't, right? So it's, wherever you can, and I've met enough people through APLD, that Association of Professional Landscape Designers. And I know you're an APLD, but that not everybody has a horticulture and or a design degree, and they're very successful. Like they made sure they filled the gaps in that they needed to be successful. And if you're that responsible to do that, you're going to be awesome, with what you do. So I love seeing the breadth in our profession. And I love that we have a great mix of people from different professions and backgrounds coming into it to kind of, inject that fun and unique perspective into landscape design, which is really neat.
Well, like you said before, like you don't have to have really strong graphic skills to be a good
Mhm.
designer, but I think it's a really valuable skill to be able to have at least decent graphics, so that because it's a huge communication tool to
It is.
express your ideas to your clients, to the contractor, all of that. And even if it's just very baseline and kind of like you said, just getting people started, it'll change the trajectory vastly versus, napkin sketches and, just going out and picking out plants and like trying to do it all in your head without actually having it on paper. You can get to the next level so much easier when you have some graphics capabilities.
And I agree. And, you had asked about, did I anticipate community in that first class? Another thing I did not anticipate, I thought I was teaching drawing skills, but I realized I was teaching people to have that confidence. Because when you were saying like it is nice to have some skills like that. So how I teach is I build up the skills on top of each other each week. I don't just throw people in and say, "Hey, draw perspective." We start from like square one on how to draw a line,
Yeah.
and then we build on that. And it's nice to see the confidence build each week because you're building on each skill. And when you have so much more confidence at the end, and I did not realize and anticipate that's what I was helping everybody do, is just not only give them skills, but to give them that confidence to, as you said, visually communicate their ideas to others. There's something powerful about that. I know at Iowa State, I definitely saw more confidence in the students that had my graphics class versus one that came in, transferred in. They didn't have enough time to take it. And I would say, that's fine. You don't have to. You just learn it as you go. But they would definitely struggle more. And a lot of them were fine. They just got caught up and their peers would help them. But but they always felt a little off because they didn't have that basic, skill kind of under their feet before they jumped into design. So there is something special about having that. It's just, again, it's just a confidence builder when you can have that.
Well, and a lot of how you teach graphics teaches not just like how to communicate that visually, but speed along with it. So they're building the efficiency instead of just,
Yeah.
you know, I know some people like they'll get down and they'll be like shading and stippling when they can just, ink it out really quick with like a Sharpie.
Right. Right.
And so I think that efficiency helps people a lot as well. It's a huge skill, especially when you are running a business, and efficiency matters a lot.
Exactly. Exactly. We do talk about that a lot. Like, we don't have time to draw every single leaf on this tree. Yes, my shrubs look like meatballs, but when you are in a hurry, you're going to draw a circle for a shrub. We don't have
Yeah.
time to do every single leaf, and that's fine if you want to, but it's all about speed.
Yeah. So as you're kind of growing your offerings, your community, and kind of working with kind of the ebbs and flows of the types of students and the questions and all of that you get, do you have a process, or are you developing a process to analyze what things are working, what things aren't, things that you might want to change or add as you continue to develop those offerings?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that I've learned being a business owner now is having a good bookkeeper and accountant. And I am very fortunate. So I work at a company called Evolved Finance, and they actually work with, their specialty is working with online companies. So they're an online company, and I learned about them ages ago. I used to follow someone online when I've always been intrigued with an online business, and I've been following people for years. And somebody that I had followed years ago always had Evolve Finance on their show, and I'm like, I can't wait till I can work with them, So anyway, so they help a lot because they help me with forecasting and budgeting and looking ahead. And then we have these great spreadsheets now that I can use from them, so that I can actually see, like, what is the percentage that Garden Graphics Toolkit brings in versus my design membership. And actually, one of the reasons I finally decided to drop my graphics membership is because I realized I was putting in just as much time for my graphics and my design membership, but the graphics membership was bringing in a lot less revenue. And I thought, okay, I could still serve this audience in the design membership and make it better if I can bring them together. So just seeing those numbers made me realize, like, okay, like, that makes more sense. And then of course, the advice I've gotten is to make sure you focus on the topics that you're doing. Instead of having 50 different classes, maybe have a core class like my drawing class, and then have my membership as my other main thing. But I don't have to have 10 memberships and 10 courses. Like, just focus. So I'm watching those things, but I will tell you, I'm always dreaming of all the other, like, as any designer or artist, you're always like, oh, I can do this and I can do that and I can do this. So I'm always trying to stay focused. And I have ideas for other classes, and my daughter works with me, and she's like, Mom, you need to stay focused. I'm like, I'll stay focused. But I have all these other ideas. Like, should I teach a design class in the future in my own way? Should I have more individual drawing classes, like whatever that might be? And I'm like, no, I just need to focus right now and get my footing. And maybe someday Garden Graphics Toolkit will reach everybody that I need to reach. And then maybe I can change that into a different format, So I'm constantly looking at the big picture and how those fit in, but I'm also trying to stay as focused as I can so I can help the students that are in those classes. Like Garden Graphics Toolkit, the drawing class, I only teach in January because I want to make sure those students get my attention, and I want to make sure they leave with the skills that they hope to come to get, from me. So it's a high priority for me to focus on them in January, February, March. And I could teach it several times a year, but then I'm going to get burned out, and then they may not get the attention that they deserve. So I'm always looking at the numbers. I mean, I can do that now because I know how to do that because of my bookkeeping and my accounting company, I just feel very fortunate for them because they also are educators. So they're also teaching us as clients how to do bookkeeping. They have classes actually, and I've been following them for years on their podcast. So I just feel fortunate that I can use the numbers now to look at how that's impacting, the classes that we're teaching. But I love creating content. Like that's my favorite thing. And I not only love creating content, but I love the illustration end of the graphics end of things too. So one of the reasons I have my daughter help me is because she can draw also, and she can write, which is awesome. So she's 22, she's younger. When I say my daughter, she's not like a 14-year-old. Even though she did help me a lot when she was younger too. But we love creating really beautiful content. So instead of just like, this is how you do this, but here's how to do this, but with all these pretty things to support that. So hopefully it makes more sense. So it's been fun to create the content and then be able to see, like, does this make sense?
Yeah.
And yeah, and just so you know, that's not even my only I also do other things. Like I do presentations and I also do illustration work. Monrovia is my biggest, client right now for design work or illustration work rather. And that's kind of my own. So I'm not teaching students there, but I like that I have those different revenue streams coming in, but it's also good for me. I mean, I love working with Monrovia. I love doing illustration work. I love doing designs for them. And there's something really special about that. And then the presentations for me is about getting that in-person classroom time, which I need because it keeps me sharp as an instructor. So I know what's working and what isn't working. So having all of those things, I'm constantly analyzing them. And I may decide someday, like, is the illustration work worth it? Like, I look at the numbers, but right now, all those things are worth it. But it's focusing, those help me keep me focused, looking at those numbers. That's a long answer.
No, I thought that was perfect. And I think it is. I think everyone creative has a hard time focusing, and it's that kind of caffeinated squirrel brain where you want to do all the things and it's hard to focus. And I feel that same way. Like I have so many ideas but I have very limited time. So it's like, okay, what has the most traction? What's going to be the most beneficial? Like where should I, focus my time and energy? And sometimes it's a really hard decision to put something down that you're really excited about. But
I know. And I am definitely like just like all of us, an idea generator. I'm always like, we gotta do this, we gotta do that, we gotta do this. And I've just learned over the years, let's perfect this first. And it's hard. It's hard to do that.
Yeah. I actually, when I moved my office around, I found some old notebooks and I found one that I had written a bunch of stuff like planning out my future business.
Yes.
And this was when I was working for somebody else and I had this idea of creating the Kismet Design Collective, which was going to be teaching classes and doing like courses and stuff that would be kind of like a side business for me, once my kids were old enough that I had more free time, which didn't happen. The older they get, the less free time I have. But it was really interesting, like going back and looking at those ideas. And now like I'm doing a lot of those things, but it's totally different, like the way things end up happening. So I may have tabled it at the time, but it's kind of come full circle now. So it's really fun and interesting to kind of, it's hard to focus, but it's nice because those ideas do come back.
And those ideas, yes. And it's funny that you say that because sketchbooks in general and putting down those ideas, like you do your logo and you do like, I went through all that. I mean, I still do it. I love doing that. Yeah. But it is fun to come back to it. And honestly, like those dreams, I feel like that feeds your everyday like existence. Like it just brings energy. And even though you may not be doing it now, everything you are doing now actually does build on it or work towards it. And it's fun. Like I always encourage people, definitely write those down in sketchbooks and look at them later, like you just said.
Yeah.
And I need to do it more, go back and look at them because all of our best ideas are in those books, and to go back and actually see where you can use them, but still stay focused at the moment, but you can still build towards those.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I forget who it was. It might've been Courtney Olander said that she keeps a notebook of like just ideas so that it's like, you can get it out of your head, that it's there, you can go back to it at any point, or even just kind of flip through and be like, oh, I forgot about that. Like, I would love to like be organized enough to just have a notebook that's like my idea notebook, but they're scattered all over everything. Like the one that I was talking about was like my to-do list notebook. which I do all on Asana now. So I was thinking, I was like, I don't have a record of those random like doodles and ideas. And I was like, maybe I need a notebook. So yeah, it's fun.
That's cool.
Um, so one last question, before I let you go. I know we've got to wrap up. Actually two questions. First one, how has your recent successes with your growing community and everything impacted your vision for the trajectory of your business?
Oh, that is such a hard question. I think the biggest thing is that it's helped me realize, and this is coming from my bookkeeping and that financial end of things too. I've realized that I need to take things slow and allow things to build up because I can focus now. I'm trying to focus better and better, and that it's okay to grow slowly. I think in my back of my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this really fast. We're just going to grow really, intensely. And it's actually been nice because it has grown slowly. And my accountant and I have talked about this. He's like, you want it to be slow because it'll be stronger. It gives you the opportunity to learn, because I have made some big mistakes with my accounting end of things. In the last year, I realized a big mistake and I'm like, oh my gosh, how did that happen? And I learned from it. I mean, that's how we learn, right? And he's like, this is why you want to grow slow, because you want to be able to. Even though we've had lots of great successes, luckily it's been a slow growth, and I'm going to keep doing that. The other thing is, as I learn from my students what they need, I've been slowly pivoting. Like, we've talked a lot, like, do we need to talk about business? I'm like, well, no, other people, like, you're doing that. Other people are doing that. Like, maybe we don't need to do that, but maybe, I might see some other things where people need help. So for instance, now that we're building all this content in my membership, like, maybe we can start sharing some of that with the public in mini classes. And so I'm learning where people need help because of my current students, and I'm able to pivot a little bit with that. So it's kind of like this slow shaping. I'm learning from my students what they need. We're realizing, okay, what can we offer? How can we lead them to other places that maybe offer something better? Like, I don't need to teach intense naturalized planting design. I can just send them to Kelly Norris, right? I mean, I can teach them a little bit to get them started, or I can send them to you if they need to learn about business processes and, more of the construction end of things or whatever that might be. So I can send people off to other places, but it's been fun. I'm not sure, I'm not sure yet where we're going. I'm actually kind of rethinking a lot of things right now. But right now, one of the biggest things we decided this year is, let's not create any new classes. We just did a drafting supply club class last year, because we realized that when we do our drawing class, I talk about drafting supplies. But if I were to add a lesson that intensely talks about that, it would now be a 9-week course. So we made the decision, let's just do a separate class where we just talk about drafting supplies, offer that a couple more times. But it took a lot of time to build that class, even though my coworker or one of our team members did that most of it, and I was just reviewing it. Takes a lot of time, as you know, too, like, to build a course. I'm like, okay, we're just going to stop now from building courses, and we're going to really focus on what we've got and just make it better and better, and make sure we pivot within the membership and our other things that we're doing, and just make sure we're focusing on what students need. So long term, I'm not sure where it's all going. All I know is right now we're kind of like slowing it down as much as we can, so we can serve and help people and support them and empower them as much as we can now. And I just keep learning. I'm just lucky I get to learn from my own students and see what they actually need. And we're just going to keep building on that. Maybe I'll have a better vision in a year if we talk again, but that's right now. It's about slowing down and making sure, instead of making us feel thin and doing too much, we're trying really hard to focus on the beginning designers, helping them with those graphics, helping them get established in design, and helping us have that support group so we can help each other in these early phases of building our companies.
I think that's fantastic. And
Hopefully.
I think
Excited.
it's really worth circling back. You said something and I wrote it down, that I think is worth repeating over and over again. It should probably be on a t-shirt. It is okay to grow slowly. Like that, I think everyone kind of needs that permission to myself. I'm very guilty of wanting to just like be really impatient and want to do all the things and really just kind of see that trajectory climb really fast. And I think it's such a good point that when you do move slower, you have a better chance to build a stronger foundation and figure out the things before, the hard lessons become really painful because they're a lot bigger because you're growing so fast. So I think that's really, really valuable advice.
Good. Thank you. I hope so. I've just learned from other people too, and I have to be patient. I see other business people that I also follow on podcasts. We were talking about this earlier, and they've said that it can take 2 or 3 years to build that foundation and to see that, where you want to go. And so I'm just being patient and keep doing what I love, teaching and helping other people, hopefully. And boy, I just feel very fortunate. I feel very fortunate that I even get to do this. I'll be honest, like teaching at Iowa State was a dream. I mean, all of my jobs have been a dream. I've been very lucky. I mean, how can you not love being in landscape design, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you too. I mean, I just feel fortunate that I chose this profession, and it's just, I've always loved gardens. I've always loved landscape design and design in general. And my whole career, I've been very fortunate to practice it, to teach it, and now reach more people. And I just feel very, very lucky that I can even do this to help so many people. So I like the slow and steady approach because it's helping me learn what they need. And I'm hoping that benefits more people because of it.
Wonderful. I think that's great. And I totally agree. I feel very fortunate as well. So last question, do you have any questions for me?
Ooh, do I have any questions for you? I want to ask you.
I didn't pose this one to you. I sneak attacked you with it.
So, of course, my intrigue with you is your knowledge of owning a company. And now that you have your podcast, you're able to share that knowledge. So I'm curious, like, how do you want to serve people more in the future with that knowledge? Because a lot of us have this amazing knowledge, and, emerging professionals in particular, like, how do I learn that? How do I get to that so I can build my own company? So you're obviously sharing it on your podcast. How else do you want to
So I
serve?
have so many ideas for different classes and courses and things, which, especially with spring fast approaching, that's really going to end up having to take a side seat because I'll never be able to, well, I never say never, but I can't imagine giving up my design clients. And, that's really the bulk of my business. Like this stuff is more just a passion project. But doing more courses, doing more teaching, getting opportunities to, I went to Washington, DC and talked to the local APLD group there, which was amazing. Getting to talk to your students, like I really enjoy that. The thing I'm very nervously working on but enjoying is writing a book, and it's all really focused on trying to pour a lot of those ideas. And I don't know that I would even say it's necessarily knowledge because I don't have all the answers, but it's more like just kind of as I'm working through this and seeing the successes and seeing my business build, like what things work, what things don't, all the knowledge that I've been able to gain from other mentors and people that I've worked for and worked with, like all of that I think is so valuable. And I feel like there's a really big gap in our industry where a lot of landscape professionals that don't come into the profession in the same circumstances that you and I both did are missing a big gap of that knowledge building piece. So they're just kind of feet to the fire immediately and having to kind of figure it out on their own. So I think it's a really great opportunity to provide a resource for people to just have some of those questions answered. And I'm working through that right now. And that's why I have the focus topics each month. So each month has a focus topic that is geared towards the topics of my book, at least as it lays now. Once it all is written, it will undoubtedly change and morph, but really trying to give people the tools and the confidence to know that, you know, the building a business part is something I've found surprisingly unbelievably enjoyable. I thought it would be a drag, and I thought it would be something that would pull me away from the creative design part, but I felt the exact opposite. So I want to pour into that a little bit.
It's funny that you say that, because I love that part too. Like, I think I read way more business books and listen to way more business podcasts and marketing podcasts than I do landscape design. But it's because we already have our degrees in that, right?
Yeah.
And now we're like, but I love that too. And even accounting, like I'm not a big accounting person, but I am very intrigued. And I'm very fortunate that I work with someone that is willing to teach me, even though they can do it. I don't need to do it, but I love learning about it and how you can use it as a tool in your business. It's amazing. I'm so glad you're doing all of this. It's so awesome.
Thank you. You as well. And I could chat with you forever, but I know we're wrapping up on time. But I thank you so much for doing this again. And hopefully we will get a chance to do it again before too long. I think it's been almost a year since you were on the podcast before. I'll have to look back. I'll put a link in the show notes to what that first podcast episode was. And then I'll put a link to your website as well, so that everyone can find you. But before I let you go, your design course is wrapping up soon, and that opens up the community. Who is the community open to?
First of all, thank you for letting me come today. This is so much fun. Our drawing class is ending soon, but our membership, for, like we had mentioned, the design membership is opening up in March, and it's called the Garden Design Collective, and it only opens twice a year, and anybody can join that group. You can be a homeowner that does this for a hobby. You can do this if you're dreaming about doing this for clients. You can join us if you are a practicing professional and you just want a support group. That's awesome. We cover a different topic every month. We do an activity. I write a term paper basically every month, which is just crazy, but I love doing it. I pick a different topic and write a PDF on it. We have videos, guest speakers, all kinds of stuff mixed throughout. We read books. It's a lot of fun. You do what you want. You can spend 10 minutes, you can spend 2 hours every month, whatever you want. But it's just a great time. So yeah, late March, whoever wants to join. So if you go to the website, Garden Design Collective, it's one of the things on the first page, or you can go to the courses section to learn more about it too. But Chrissy has come and spoken with our group now, which is really fun. Hopefully she'll come back for another topic. I just keep picking her brain. This is why I love APLD, because I have so many awesome resources of designers around the country and world. And I just feel very fortunate for that organization.
It is great. And I'd love to come back on. It was really fun. So, and
Awesome.
I will, again, I'll put a link to your website, so anyone that wants to join your community can. I think it's fantastic. And thank you again so much for your time, Lisa.
Thank you, Chrissy. Have a great day. Appreciate it.
To wrap up, I want to thank you for your time. I hope the ideas discussed today have left you feeling excited and energized. As I build both my business and my life, I value the support and feedback you provide. I would love for you to reach out to me to let me know what you think, give me ideas, or just to connect. Please don't forget to subscribe and also share with a friend. Until next time, go create something wonderful.